He was not Irish. That was the main thing. He was Austrian from Amstetten, a city Gina had never heard of. He came to them with high recommendations, greatly enhancing the reputation of the school, which now boasted a native speaker of German as well as French. However, Solange was on maternity leave that fall. If she had been there, they would have, as usual, insensitively appointed her as his mentor. Gina, who knew basic German, became the solution to Brother Shield's problem. "Just until he gets the hang of it," he said. "Show him the sights, go to a club, you know it yourself. There is no better woman." He sat down at his table, a lustful and sensual monk from some picture about the wages of sin. 20 years as director were etched into his skin like smallpox pits. However, he looked like an imposter in civilian clothes, slightly despicable. At least his cassock always made him stand out among men. "What's his name?" "Maximilian Worth," he proclaimed, a born actor. "I never liked the sound of the German language. I haven't spoken it in years. Yes, it's like a bicycle." He handed her a piece of paper with the details. "We'll come back to you." She took the initiative and called him in the evening. His American accented English was perfect. He praised her pronunciation of the constrained Grüß Gott, saying that she spoke very well. "Well, you're kind to say so, but—" Her telephone voice was unpleasant to her. On the third ring, as Mike called it. He always had a sense of humor. She agreed to meet him in the school hall at 10 in the morning the next day. He said he was looking forward to it. There is no better woman. She hung up and said, "Damn you, Shield." "Whom?" Mike came in from the dining room and left his tray at the sink. "Oh, it's just work. They expect you to give up everything. What happened? Are you okay?" "Just a little dizzy." He sighed, holding the back of his chair. "Sit down. You should have called me, honey. Don't mind me. Maybe I'll go to bed early." "Of course. Be careful going up the stairs. They don't deserve you, and neither do I." His hand was cold on her cheek as he walked past her towards the front door. The next morning, he was waiting for her in the secretary's office. "Maximile." "Max, please." They shook hands. "I'm sorry for the delay. Patricia was very nice." Patricia giggled like the nun she was meant to be and returned to her stuck paper. "Thank you a million, Trish. So, Max, I think Brother Shield is waiting for us?" He didn't look at all like his accent suggested. A stocky figure in a blue double-breasted suit, strawberry blonde and crimson around gray eyes that were beginning to succumb to puffiness. He looked like a farmer. She knew what they looked like. He tapped the banister as they walked up the stairs, taking in the surroundings like a new owner. "First day," she said. "It's never as bad as it seems. I'm just excited to get started. Here we come." She knocked on Shield's door, and they were invited inside. "Guten Morgen, guten Morgen." He grabbed Max's hand. "Well, she, your protector, takes good care of you, huh?" "Everyone is very kind." Max hit the nail on the head with the mix of respect and familiarity. Shield did not like sycophants, but he tolerated impudence even less. It was a delicate balance. One wrong step, and it will make your life hell. "Sorry about that," she said as they walked outside. "He's actually not that bad. Just a bore. Sticks to his habits. It was as if you weren't there. You will get used to it." She took him to the teacher's lounge to meet him. As she had expected, Connie Galt attacked him like a rash. Oh, Vienna is such a beautiful city, so cultural. She was looking for an opportunity to cheat on Pat again. Bored to death. Max was attentive to her, if a little embarrassed, but he managed his discomfort like a true professional. Gina watched him from a professional standpoint before she intervened and pulled him over. "I think you've already met everyone." She lowered her voice. "I'm dying for a cigarette." "I thought it wasn't allowed," he said. "My office?" He relaxed as soon as they entered the hallway. "Is Gina Italian?" "Hardly. This is from Regina. I was born right after the Marian year. My mother had to be original." "Now he knows how old you are. Great. I remember this." He smiled. Many Marys. It was driving the nuns at school crazy, trying to tell them all apart. Here we come. She apologized for the perceived confusion and directed him away from her desk to the private study chairs in the corner. Just open the window behind you. Here, take one of mine. Rothmans, he read from his cigarette. Are these Irish? English, bad start. Yeah, Palmol, we have one at home too. She caught his eye on her rings and appreciated his hands. Thick, rough fingers, more like the fingers of a worker than a teacher. He didn't have his rings. Are you the school psychologist, Gina? Yes, I am, yes. Career guidance. I also teach some classes, junior certificate business stages. He waited for her to finish, but her thoughts drifted away. There was something unsettling about the singularity of his attention. She pushed the ash aside and missed the ashtray by a considerable distance. Damn. I'm sorry. Let me... They both went for the dirt at the same time, but he got there first. She pulled her hand away before they touched. She looked at herself while removing her makeup and said, Have you ever heard of Amstetten? Mike, who had been in bed reading the jockey's autobiography, shook his head in the mirror. His face was stern, his glasses low on his nose. What is this? He finally said. A city in Austria. Max is from there. Who? German teacher? Did you hear a word? Max. Like that German actor. What? Actor. Shell, Snell. I don't know. That Austrian? She climbed in next to him and lay down on her side. From this angle he looked so fragile. I could have lost you, she thought. Her stomach clenched as she touched his chest under the blanket. We're so lucky. Remission, such a beautiful word. Hello, he said. Hello? Good book? Ah, you know. He was covered in bones under his pajamas. However, he felt stronger than he had in a long time, and that encouraged her. 4 years of remission. One more and he'll be clean, just in time for both of them to turn 50. He fought so hard, they both had... He leaned over and kissed her forehead. Tired? He asked. She nodded. We'll keep our heads down. Okay, sweetie. Good night. Good night. He fell asleep before her, and she lay awake, listening to his breathing. It was a hangover from the worst nights of his illness, when she feared that every breath he took could be his last. He won't die alone. I'll be here for him. She bore her fatigue without complaint. Who was she to complain about? It wasn't about her, it was about being close to him. That was all that mattered. She turned on her side and pulled her knees up. Shell. Snell. What was this actor's name? When they were dating, they went to the movies a lot. Rialto, in Limerick. So long ago. Smoke fell into the beam of the projector. His arm wrapped around her shoulders, gradually pulling her closer to him. Around them, couples do the same. Sometimes she opened her eyes and looked at them, ashamed of herself, but unable to look away. The next day she was calm with Max. He found her during the morning tea break and sat silently, while she, not paying attention to him, continued to talk to Connie. If this upset him, he didn't show it. His calmness alarmed her. She carried the feeling of anxiety with her into her second year of business studies. She gave them a test and sat on the windowsill of the classroom, looking out at the prefab houses and the elementary school yard beyond. Bull de Stafford was in the next room in his English honors class. She could hear his smug monotone, the occasional lewd laughter from his followers in response to one of his allusions. Every poem he discussed, he returned to the pleasures of the flesh. This was his favorite topic. Her breath fogged up the glass. She wiped it down and watched 2 dogs, an Afghan hound and a shepherd, mating in the schoolyard. A moment later, the brother came out, ringing the bell to disperse them. Brother Crown. When he came back, he was absent. Another nervous breakdown explained away as sick leave. Problems with spiritual calling. This explained a lot. One-sided minds. This was the basis of all male reasoning. But it was meaningless without the kind of love she happily found. Sex always ended at some point, but love remained. Because even before he got sick, it was, "Boyle, are you eating something?" "Miss, no miss." His mouth was black with licorice, malignant acne, even on the scalp. "To Brother Shield's office, now." "Miss, now." Her loud voice was like a gunshot. She was more worried than they were. Connie beat her to it and organized the party for Max. Traditional music session at Gene Kelly's bar. She couldn't refuse. Mike agreed to go with her, and she knew he would get tired quickly. This would give her a reason to leave earlier. Max smoked King Edward cigars and drank whiskey. It looked like he might have had a lot to drink. He spent most of the evening in the smoking area, talking or listening to Connie, who was without Pat. The neckline of her dress didn't suit her, except he had a fetish for melanoma. Whatever she does, a woman of 45 flirting like a 16-year-old. She took Mike's hand under the table. Cold. He's always had poor circulation. "What do you think about music?" she asked. "This is a D.D. Delaney nightmare. It is endless. My head is splitting with headache. Remember Kaylay at the motorway? I remember carrying you home after a few of them." "You have selective memory." He couldn't think of an answer. Finally, he said, "This is my round, right? I will go." The order was large and complex. Max accompanied her to the bar, despite her objections. "Honestly, I'm fine. I can handle it. Please." She complied, impressed by his persistence despite himself. She couldn't tolerate the man's lack of will. "The music is interesting," he said. "That's one way to describe it. Don't you like it?" "No, I like it. It's just a little monotonous, that's all. But there's so much variety." Tension arose between them, becoming increasingly awkward as the drinks piled up on their trays. He was constantly on the verge of saying something, but never continued. Not out of shyness, but out of a sense of prudence, which she had last seen in men of a long-gone generation. "He's not Irish. Are you married?" It came out before she even realized what she was saying. "No." She reached for a glass of beer shandy and dropped it. "Damn. Sorry, could you top it up, please?" The bartender, already tired of them, silently complied with her request. Strange. He took out his wallet. "Connie asked me the same question." "No, put it away. Please, I insist. We're in a circle." She tried to explain that this was a violation of public etiquette, but she sounded childish and increasingly inarticulate. "Yeah," he nodded. "See how much you teach me. Is this for Mike?" He took the shandy with 2 fingers. "Yes. How dare you?" Her rage faded, leaving behind despair. She held Mike's hand with a defensiveness that eventually seemed pathetic. Max and Connie laughed. Her withered cleavage was as exposed as his body language. The next act was inevitable. "Let's go," she said. "Sure, you can come back if you want," Mike said. "Yeah, no, I have a terrible headache. Laughter is contagious." She smelled cigars as soon as they got into the car. Her clothes, her hair, her pores. By the time they got home, despite her attempts to drown out his j'adore, the smell seemed to get stronger. "I'll be there in a minute," she said. He gestured, barely audible as he walked up the stairs. She went to the kitchen and pulled out the plugs from the sockets. I wiped the surfaces that were already clean. The smell of cigars seemed tangible, a miasma that hovered around the outline of her reflection in the window above the sink. The same color as the dirty water she was squeezing out of the rag. "I'm so tired." "You have no right to complain." The silence of the kitchen reproached her. She wanted to break it into pieces and cut herself on the fragments. Pat Galt, like all vacuums of humor without exception, considered himself funny. His comedy routines with foreigners lived up to the silliest stereotypes. "We have ways to make you talk." His companions at the dining room table laughed politely, then fell silent as Max entered. "Him and those accents." Connie stole another chip from Gina. "Gotta pull myself together." Gina watched her carefully. not quite sure what she was looking for. Connie used to be a damn good poker player, left you ruined and in a pool of blood. Max waved to them as he sat down at Pat's table. "Look at this!" Connie nodded. "Look at the insincerity." And he just made fun of him. "Anyway, you had a good chat," Gina said. "Ah, he's nice. A little weird, I guess. Harmless. And spoke very highly of you." "Take off. I'm serious. You're German. All this. How smart you are." Bridge Ossery walked over and sat down, just in time. "He plays tennis?" she said. "For intercompany?" "Mention football," Connie said. "About some selection he went through. As soon as they mention sports, I switch off." Bridge smiled at Gina. Oxbow. A big, muscular girl who stopped being honest with herself a long time ago. She took out her frustrations in sports. "I always sweat profusely on the tennis court." "It was great to see Mike," she said. "He looks so good." What word did Connie use? Disconnected. 4 years of constant positivity were like a diet of powdered sugar. Gina became hyperglycemic a long time ago. They didn't do anything. Connie wasn't interested. The shark did have a few clues. The closet began to affect her dust allergy as soon as she opened its doors. Hello, 1999. Oh my God, those stripes. She pulled out a cream blouse that she never wore. Around the cuffs and collar is pure yellow. It still had the price tag on it. Jade. It closed last year. They ordered it especially for her. I have nothing to wear. Mike always laughed when she said that, but now, for the first time, she realized that it was really true. There wasn't even anything to save. She filled 3 garbage bags and put them in the trunk. She could take them to Vincent de Paul in the morning. The next day was Saturday. She brought Mike his breakfast and pill salad at 8. "I could go to Limerick today," she said. "Are you feeling up to it?" "What's in Limerick? Just drive around, look at the shops." "Go. I'll be fine." "You are sure? You must be tired of looking at me." "Because you're such a terrible sight." She leaned in to kiss him. "Careful. Take care." "Damn. Sorry. I'll get a rag." He caught the glass before its contents were completely spilled. "Oh, damn, it's all over the blanket." He sounded as absurd as her mother had lately. "This meat is terribly dry. Anything but stoicism." His whims never lasted long. It had become a joke by the time she returned. "I'll probably get lost in the pillowcase when I change it," he said. "Come on, let's do it now." "Go ahead. You should probably get ready." "I was going to take a shower?" He was already up and dressed when she was ready to leave. There were horse races on TV. "Are you okay for—" he said. "I have a card." "Oh." He drew the Pentecostal. "Get something to eat." "Fuck you." But she still took it, this time in defiance without ignoring the insult. "Please him," the oncologist told her. "Help him retain some dignity. Stick to the old agreements, the old routines as much as possible. Pocket money for a good girl." She folded the bill and put it in the back pocket of her jeans. "I won't be late. Don't forget yours." "Pills before lunch." He made a face as he finished her sentence for her, then became serious when he saw her expression. "I'm only kidding, honey." "I didn't say anything." "It's your—" "Don't you dare say that." Okay, sorry." "Sorry, love. You just seem a little—" "It's okay." She kissed his forehead. "We haven't had one like this in a long time." His eyebrows were raised, as if in anticipation of more domestic chaos. "Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm turning into my mother." "No way. Go have fun." The low winter sun hung over the ring road as she entered the bypass. The blackness of the steering wheel emphasized the carmine of her nails. Maybe a top in these colors. Shoes to match. I'll need some boots for the winter. And a coat. She hit the gas, absorbing the white lines with even greater haste. Her stomach felt bloated and nauseous. She was also sweating again, undoing the shower she had taken. "It's your—" "Fuck him anyway. He knows me too well." However, she wasn't supposed to start until next week. I was hoping that everything would go without incident until then. But by the time she arrived in Limerick, she had already found herself bleeding. She bought pads from a 24-hour pharmacy and put one on in the hotel bathroom before heading out to the lobby and ordering coffee. Her elongated reflection in the glass of the table was pleasant. Finally, she admitted that she looked good, even if the slimness was an optical illusion. For something to eat, she wanted fried meat. Connie mentioned a pub near the station that served steaks so big you couldn't handle them. She headed south through rows of divided Georgian architecture, holding her handbag tightly. Other bags prevented her from moving, especially the one containing boots. 150 pounds, but they were discounted from 200. What could she do but buy them? Plus, they matched the dress she'd found, a red wool turtleneck with black edges and sides. Modest enough for work, but it emphasized her figure. She slipped through narrower streets where internet cafes and Asian shops contrasted with grim and unfriendly locals. Maybe a glass of wine with her meal if she ever finds this place. Red wine with red meat. It made sense. Mystique. At first she thought it was a Russian script. Toys Video Magazines. The door was closed, but there was a doorbell. The barred window was dimly lit, and an indifferent plastic rosary hung on one of its squares. She looked around the street before pressing the bell. The door clicked open, and she stepped inside. There were 2 customers inside, both men, who ran away when she entered. The salesman, a bald man who seemed to have been rubbed to his wonderful shine by chicken Kiev oil, if the smell of the place was anything to go by, looked at her as if she were a ghost emerging from the cover of one of his videos. Obviously, they are not used to real women here. Sections were distributed according to preferences. There was also a used section, which she approached with caution. There was a sign on the wall announcing a 50% discount on your next purchase, if accompanied by an exchange. It was a good job. Did men really pay such prices for this? 50 pounds for one video? Of course they are fools. They would pay any price. The bell rang, and the man walked in, then walked out when he saw her. She grabbed the video without looking and took it to the counter. The salesman seemed happy to see her back. She was bad for business. Do you have a refund? No. 50. Do you need a package? No, thanks. She took Mike's note from her back pocket and handed it to him. She played the video after Mike had gone to bed, recklessly drinking a second bottle of wine and echoes of the gin she had chosen for lunch. Unlimited, they called him. It was a compilation of scenes from the early 90s. She could tell by her clothes. One girl wore a suit similar to the one she had then. However, the impulses that emerged were eternal. They never went out of style. She looked in amazement. The women were beautiful, if senseless, but she had never seen a more disgusting and less charming collection of men. For some reason, they all left their shirts tied in a knot at the midriff. When she turned it off, she felt more sadness than pain or horror. Getting upset was just a waste of passion. And the offense, in fact, was trivial. To erase this, a sincere and adult act of love, is enough. She looked at the ceiling and thought, my husband, looking through memories like old Polaroids, weekends in Achill and Kilkenny, a trip to Amsterdam for their 10th anniversary, those hungover weekend mornings in a child-free house. Husband. One word before was enough to make her wet. To know him in a way that no other woman had known was a pleasure that went far beyond mere physical sensation. When they had sex, they couldn't be anything other than honest with each other. She never had to pretend. She swirled the sediment of the wine, listening to his steps upstairs. She wasn't perfect. Fatigue became a fetish that had to be appeased with 8 hours of sleep and lying down on weekends. He started wearing sweatpants to bed. His body language became defensive in his sleep. His back was to her, and his knees were drawn up, as if he was hiding something shameful. She didn't care. She knew from him that he wasn't having a hard time, and she wasn't bothered by the relief she felt before falling back to sleep. Upstairs, the base of the bed creaked as he sat back down on it. Lately, he has been restless and prone to nightmares. His oncologist told her it's not uncommon for this to happen, sometimes even years later. Post-traumatic stress. There's been a can of beer in the refrigerator since summer. Take that and Solpadine. Give him time to fall asleep again. Maybe I'll sleep in the closet so I don't disturb him. He needs sleep. He needs sleep. Returning to the living room, she turned the video back on. On Monday, she wore a dress and boots to work. Middle-age crisis? I'm just kidding, God, this is great. Connie had been arguing with her all day. She had her hair done. Perhaps she felt relegated to the background. You don't want to know how much, Gina said. I couldn't find that pub you were talking about either. Mike went with you? No, I went alone. Oh, you did it now? We should do this again sometime. Take a day and go shopping. Go further. We have to... Max walked in and headed straight to his mailbox. A handwritten letter from Austria was waiting for him. She had noticed this earlier when she was checking her own. Woman's hand. Thick, elegant characters. He stuffed it into his inner pocket without blinking. He came and sat down in front of them. Good morning. Good weekend. You have beautiful hair. He looked at Gina even as he said it. Thank you. Connie swelled up like a frog's neck. Pat didn't even notice until I told him. She spent the morning in her office taking calls about a job fair she had planned for next spring. It got to the point where she wanted to turn off her phone, but Mike's illness made her superstitious about it. He called her after 12 to chat. How do you feel? He said. This month is so hard for me. It's like everything inside is falling out of me. Have you accepted your Ponstan? Yes, doctor. Are you busy? I'll let you go. No, dear. I'm still free for a few minutes. The conversation dragged on, becoming more and more thoughtless. None of them had anything to say. She looked at her journal, comparing her handwriting with the one in Max's letter. Whoever she was left-handed. One left-hander recognizes another. If you go out today, could you pay for the ESB? She said. I don't know if I'll go out. Today, I don't feel very stable. He will never return to work. I need to go. Someone is at the door, she said. Okay, I understand. But she had already hung up. Come in. Gina, excuse me. Do you have a minute? Max. Of course. Come in. Come in. His chair groaned as he sat down in front of her desk. If you're busy, he said, trust me. She waved her hand at the piles on her desk. This is mainly for beauty. He laughed, watching the skin of her calves as she leaned back and crossed her legs. His hands were restless, clenching and unclenching. I must apologize, he said. For what? For what? Come on. For that evening. I didn't mean to offend you or Mike. Connie explained to me about his... I didn't know. I'm sorry. Sometimes when I drink... Oh, look, we've all been there. You couldn't know. I should have told you. My father, you know, he had it in his intestines. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. Many years ago, he smiled, looking at the table. I was young when he... It's terrible when a child has to go through this. Max, look, everything is fine. However, I was also rude to you. When? I asked if you were married. I thought you got offended. Are you offended? Sorry, it means irritated. Does this have another meaning? Oh, you mean in the American sense? Yes, that means something completely different. He blushed. Her stomach growled from the boiling acid. His discomfort was charming, but her sympathy was not without its share of sadism. Sometimes it was nice to see them squirm. Well, now you know, she said. Really? He quickly regained his calm, just as quickly as he had lost it. You should let me buy you lunch today, to make amends. Oh, well, I brought a sandwich. Actually, no, yes. You are right. Good. They shook hands. His was dry, rough, like a mason's. She handed him her right one, enjoying the novelty. They left school early to avoid the rush and have a chance to grab a table upstairs at Tanner's, away from their colleagues who usually occupied the corner downstairs. She wanted privacy, and felt that he did too. Her Guinness stew tastes like soap, but she was so hungry she ate it anyway. He had turkey and ham, which didn't look any better. She watched him eat, trying to do it unnoticed. He liked his food. Halfway through dinner, he was talking about desserts. The letter was from his daughter. He talked about her and his ex-wife while they ate. She's taking Mathura next year. I hope to be there for her graduation. Her mother thinks it's a bad idea. She and I have been divorced for 2 years now. I'm sorry. You're welcome. It was the best decision under the circumstances. You're the first person here I've told about this, although I think Connie has an idea. Not much gets past her. He cut the meat with special intention, as if he were fighting ghosts. She drank some water before her tongue was completely dry. Damaged goods, harmful. The perspective gave him the depth of a veteran, the sense of a man hardened by experience, both physically and emotionally. The polite thing to do would have been to change the subject, but she was prepared for ignorance. "What is her name?" she said. "Your ex's name?" "Maria. She teaches music. She scolded my deaf ear." Hardly a reason for division. The soul was probably more important to her, more than the person it was in, and yet she calls herself an atheist. He laughed and wiped his mouth. "Bad joke. A whole lifetime of them. Did you teach at the same school? Because I know it could be..." "She taught at a high school, Jesuits. Do you understand? I was at a technical school. I hate that old snobbery. One of the reasons I left, to get away from it all." "Ireland, really? You know, I'm sure you read Heinrich Böll when you were a teenager. There was also Ryan's daughter. How well you know me already, Gina." She didn't blush. She met his gaze and held it, seeing and enhancing the real pleasure of his smile. "You can tell me to shut up anytime," she said. "Why should I? Connie says I can be smart. Perhaps she really is talking about herself." They both laughed. She felt the beginnings of wetness under her arms and between her thighs. His face was flushed, glowing brightly with the oil he was secreting. He made a triangle out of his wrists on the table and looked at her from over the top, pupils dark as stout, harbingers of a more critical loss of control. "If anyone could hear us," she threw her napkin into the plate. "We're terrible. We're not that bad." They ordered coffee and orange cheesecake for dessert. When he gave her his piece of tangerine, she realized that at some point it became serious. It was nonsense. They were always the most eloquent. "Play," Mike said. "Where did this suddenly come from? Is that the theater in the old Rialto building? You liked it there that time we went there? When were we in? Everyone is praising this Hedda Gabler. I thought it would be a nice change. What day will it be? Friday." He seemed to go down, just as she had expected. No matter how well he knew her, she knew him better. "What should I do with the tickets?" she said. "How much did they cost?" "They weren't expensive. Maybe Connie will come with you." "Sorry, honey. When I feel better." "Are you okay? But you were healthy enough to go to Punchestown." She was pleased with the outcome, so she pushed her anger aside. She watched Max from the balcony above the lobby when he arrived the next morning. What if he says no? All these lies will definitely be revealed. Doesn't lying have its charm? She pretended to bump into him at her office door and invited him inside. "Are you busy on Friday night?" she said. "We have an extra theater ticket. Mike would like to really get to know you." "Friday?" He didn't seem very confident. She felt like she was back at a school dance, wanting her friend's older brother to ask her to dance. "If you already have plans." "Which play?" "Hedda Gabler." "I saw this at home once. I'd like to see it in English." "Well done. Mike will be delighted. Could we pick you up around 6? "Do you know where I live?" She pretended not to know. She told Mike she was going with Bridge. She was a safer option than Connie. Mike and her didn't get along, so it was unlikely that they would talk. Of course, he had to try to one-up her by organizing his plans. "George will come by Friday evening," he said. "Noble of him. Do not start." "I'll start. The whole time you were sick, where was he? Never showed up at the hospital." "He's in Brussels." "He's not there all the time. Connie and Pat met him and Polly at Gowran Park. There wasn't even a call." "He is busy. He didn't care. Good friends. At least I have friends. I also once had. She had to stop herself from saying that. She covered the bathroom mirror with a towel while taking a shower. It was a superstition passed on to her by her mother, and which she had maintained since she was a girl. She never asked about his rationale, although she could imagine. The body was an insult to the precious sight of the soul. Vanity was the guardian of death, something life-giving. When she stepped out of the shower Friday night, the mirror on the door was open, if foggy. She rubbed it from top to bottom and looked at herself as if for the first time. She ran a hand along each side and turned to the side. A life lived was an accurate expression, but the more she looked at her reflection, the more she began to see merit in it. He wants a woman. He wants you. The drops on her skin sparkled like pearls in the dirty light. Black linen, freshly washed, a gold ankle bracelet that she had forgotten existed. The sharpness of her cheekbones was emphasized with every stroke of her makeup brush. Her hands were confident, although it had been many years since she had paid such attention. The pleasure was as much in the craftsmanship recreated as in the result. She understood the sublimity of makeup, how it attracts the artist lost in the heart of every man. They can be such squeamish creatures, so easily turned away. They all pathetically crave the ideal. God will forgive the flesh and blood of a woman for the fact that she actually exists. She hesitated before tracing her lips. Last time she overdid it and ended up looking like a guilty child at a chocolate fountain. She thinned her lips and sent a reconnaissance pencil stroke before deciding against it. What if it looks funny? What if he thinks you're funny? However, it is better not to take risks. The shine will be quite sufficient. Pink, with crystals like grains of sugar. They made them plump, just like sugar. She didn't need to be reminded. You look good. Jesus, you scared me. I knocked. Mike raised his hands. You were in your own thoughts. He sat down on the bed with a sigh, trying not to sit on the clothes she laid out. Are you meeting Bridge there? I'll pick her up. What time will George come? He didn't say. He said he'd call when he was on his way. How do I... She turned to face him. I already said you look good. I won't say it again. Give me that bag, honey. No, the makeup bag. His hands were shaking, but that was nothing new. However, its frequency was strange. He knows? No. How could he? Don't be so paranoid. I saw this play, he said. She sounds like a real bitch. Oh, does she remind you of someone? Don't flatter yourself. Anyway, I'll wait for the movie. This will be the best. It will be easier to swallow. Have I offended you in some way, dear? Oh, Jesus, honey. Don't start. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't want to say anything. I'm easy to read, so... Sometimes, I like trying to understand you. You're usually wrong. She returned to the mirror, gratefully accepting defeat. He doesn't have the slightest idea. He never had. She combed her hair, watching in her reflection as he pulled a thread from the cuff of her blouse, trying to hide the damage. Can you get me a glass of water, honey? She said. For the pill, huh? Yes. Her temples were pulsating. Max was dressed informally, jeans with a jacket. She didn't like it, but it suited him. It took away his priestly appearance. He sat in the back seat, surprised by the emptiness. I tried to call you, she said. Net. Is Mike okay? What? Oh no, he's fine. But now he gets these dizzy spells. He nodded. There is a risk of stroke. He's furious. He's been looking forward to tonight. Where are you going? I thought, but, I mean, you and I still can. Unless... She hesitated, frightened by the static of despair in her voice. But he smiled. Certainly, he might still be conscious later. Maybe you should come back for a drink. Would you like to sit in the front? They took the old road. She hasn't driven on it in years. It was the only road into Limerick, she said. To the bypass. You're nostalgic. It was always so exciting moving in. Big city. Jesus, I sound like a real farmer. My brother has a farm. I work there every summer. We noticed your hands. Connie thought you were a sculptor. She's funny. Pat is too. They're a funny couple. Funny doesn't cover it. She turned down the heat as they passed Bird Hill, preferring the smell of it in the cold. Sometimes she glanced at his lap, not quite sure of his degree of collusion. Is he buying this comedy because he wants to? No. I think he really believes me. Connie said he has no sides. The condensation along the edges of the windshield was like a carved frame around the darkness behind their headlights. There's a dangerous place ahead here. Do you see how little time you have before you see the turn? She slowed down, dimming her headlights as they approached a T intersection. The crenellated walls in front of them were painted yellow and black. People were driving right into it. You're a good driver. Thanks, Max, but come on. I'm serious. Nobody told you this. No, they didn't. The darkness receded as they approached Anacostia and the outskirts of the city. Here is the university, she said. Did you study there? No, UCG. Galway. You should go there. The city, I mean. Is this where you met Mike? No. We played tennis. Do you play? No. Local club. We brought it in as a bargaining chip, intercompany. And then there were a lot of parties, a lot of parties. I can imagine. I don't want to think about how long ago it was. You always say things like that. Like what? It's like your life is over. We were different people then. We didn't know anything. It's like you're remembering a deceased friend. He lit 2 cigarettes and handed one to her. She smoked on the side so as not to spoil the shine. Regret only poisons, he said. I already know that. There's a lot that I... Never mind. And you always do it? What? Just say what you were going to say. It's okay. I'm hardly in a position to judge anyone. He fell silent, looking away at the suburbs disappearing behind his side mirror. She wiped her hands on her coat as they waited for the green light. You offended him, you fool? Could you be a blunter instrument? However, when he turned to look at her, he was smiling, barely noticeable, but that was enough. The theater bar was almost empty. The scattered art students and English teachers are drama buffs, unfaithful writers, dogs trained to drool at the sound of brass weekend cultural apps. What will you drink? Max said. Can I have Jameson? Just with water. She found a secluded place near the radiator and took out her mirror. The mascara was falling off and the foundation was crumbling. The fluff on her cheeks is like a newly emerging lawn. Reasonable price for 2 drinks. Max placed a glass of whiskey and a narrow bottle of water in front of her. They're subsidized. God, there aren't many people, right? We might be early. He looked around. This place was once a movie theater? Yes. It was the Rialto. They closed it in the 80s. Abandoned for years, and then someone got a grant from the lottery and renovated it. Wonderful building. It was my favorite. We went here often. I liked the theater. The feeling of spontaneity. Intimacy. She interrupted him, finishing his sentence. Sorry. Your word is better. Well, it's essentially the same thing, actually. Have you read a lot of Ibsen? College? God, it was so long ago. I remember Scandinavian living rooms, something about sex and blood. I think it's Strindberg. I always confuse them. She couldn't believe she said that out loud. But this did not bother him. Nothing seemed to bother him. The bell rang, and the whole bar suddenly came to life. He dropped the beer tag, which he tore into shreds. Fingers are as fast as a surgeon's. They were alone on the entire balcony. Hedda reminded her of her mother. This is a malignant black vanity, disillusioned and turned inward. Happiness was never an option. Only disappointment made such people feel alive. And there were enough disappointments. The whiskey burned her from the inside. She felt purified in the darkness, distracted every now and then, her gaze wandering from the stage to the rows below before rising and ending with a side glance at him. One leg over the other, a hand sandwiched between them, lips moving at intervals. Her need to know the details of his drama was as curious as that of a gossip, but as caring as that of a confessor. He could be frank with her, just as she could be with him. She could have cauterized his wounds. They smoked on the roof terrace during intermission. "What do you think happens at Judge Brack's parties?" he said. "She better stay away from him," she said. "God only knows what he's doing." Her hands shook as she lit a cigarette from the end of her previous one. "You're cold," he said. "I forgot my coat." He took off his jacket and placed it on her shoulders. "Now you're shaking," she said. "It's nothing." He looked into the distance beyond the balustrade. "What a view. Everything looks magical at night, even Limerick." "Thank you." "For what?" "For this evening. For this—" His hand gesture took in the illuminated cityscape. "Get out of here, Satan." "Well, I have the honor, but you flatter me." She laughed and threw her cigarette overboard. They took a detour home. Neither of them spoke much. She turned on Lyric FM and turned the volume down. His fingers beat out a rhythm on the restless hip. The bilingual sign at the city boundary was ominous in the harshness of the street lighting. Home. She felt disorientated, as if a spell had been lifted from her. But the night was coming to an end. There was no escaping this fact. She texted Mike to see if he was awake. They were outside Max's apartment before she got an answer. "I took a Xanax and fell asleep." "Was the performance good?" "Yes. Maybe we'll have a glass." "How is he feeling?" Max said. "He's fine. He went to bed." Her phone was beeping. "Will you buy yogurts?" "Are you okay?" he said. "Nonsense." "Which things?" "Sorry, don't pay attention. You blamed me for it. Now you do it." "That's what I do, Max. That's what we all do. We're okay. We carry on. He almost died. We have no right to complain. Sometimes I wish he would die. May I forgive you, God. He would be better. I'm evil. I'm an evil bitch. I don't care who knows it. I don't care more than anything else." He didn't say anything, just sat there in stunned silence. She turned away, tearing out her left hand with the nails of her right. She was not going to cry, or vomit, or apologize, although she felt all three things at the same time. But she needed to hear his voice. She craved it until he gave in to her. "I hate it," he said. "I hate what he did to you. I hate that you once loved him. Maybe you still love him. That it was him, not me. Gina, look at me." "No." "Gina." He touched her cheek from behind. "Not." He froze again. His breathing synchronized with hers. "If it were you," she said, "then it would be you whom I hate now. It wasn't just cancer. Our life together was like cancer. Maybe if we could have—" "No. No, I should have listened. I should never have married him." "But you came out. And then one day, many years later, you realized that all this time you have been deceiving yourself, that you were never really in love, and that you will soon die alone, like this false object, continuing mechanical movements, as always and did, never knowing what it was like. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?" She turned to look at him and found him hidden in the shadows. He was only a voice. "You know me?" he said. "I knew it from the first time we met. Yes. Your despair." She closed her eyes. "You hurt each other, didn't you?" "I didn't know I could be like this. I thought I was a good person. Marriage taught me differently. I don't want you to be good." Her voice was weak. She opened her eyes just in time to see his face emerge from the darkness. The third step of the staircase creaked like the beams of a ship. She cursed under her breath as it broke the silence of the house. She usually remembered to get around her, going straight from second to fourth. Please don't let him be at the top. She peered over the railing when she was almost at the top, checking for light beyond the bedroom. Nothing. That didn't mean he wasn't awake. Sometimes he would just lie there, looking up at the bedroom ceiling with his night-blind eyes. Just as she reached the door of the small room, she heard him call her name. Damn it! She dropped her shoes and turned on the hallway light before opening the bedroom door a crack. "Did I wake you?" "Sorry," she said. Oh, I fell asleep, and then I woke up and couldn't go back to sleep. Are you going to the small room? I thought you were sleeping. I didn't want to disturb you. What time is it now? After 2? I returned to the bridge. Did she make a move on you? Stop it, Mike. Sorry. I'm tired, dear. Since I'm already awake, you might as well lie here. She had no choice. She entered the bedroom, trying to hide her equestrian gait. He turned on the table lamp and sat down. Where did you go for a drink? He said. Oh, Tanner's. Where else? She kissed his forehead. I noticed the twitching of his nostrils. He doesn't know anything. He knows absolutely nothing. You must have been drinking a little. I couldn't. I was driving the car. Oh, Bridge was drunk, so what? She drank a little. He leaned on one elbow, watching her reflection as she washed off her makeup. What are you looking at? She said, I love watching you do it. You're like an artist. Artist? Xanax still works, right? I'm serious. It wasn't easy for you, was it, love? I'm sorry. For what? For everything. For all of this. It's not your fault you got sick. I know, but I don't tell you that often enough. Saying what? How blessed I am to have you. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.